On November 11th of 2025, a Turkish C-130 Echo Hercules military transport aircraft crashed in Georgia, in eastern Georgia, near the border with Azerbaijan. It was a pretty spectacular sight because I've never seen a C-130's entire rear end of the plane snap off and then it spun the entire way down. So in this video, I want to break down kind of like what people saw, what the eyewitness videos captured, what people saw on the ground when the emergency responders arrived, what people are speculating, and then who was on board, how many people were on board, and just go through the event because there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot of speculation. And fortunately, in this situation, there was a lot of eyewitness video and firsthand accounts of this incident unfolding. Now, first off, the plane was en route from Ganja International Airport in Azerbaijan to an airbase in Kayseri, Turkey, and it suffered some sort of an in-flight breakup shortly after entering Georgian airspace, which caused it to spiral uncontrollably to the ground. This is the deadliest military aviation accident since 2020 for Turkey. And it's one of the most tragic losses of personnel of Turkish armed forces in quite some time. Apparently, the crash took place in a hilly area in Georgia's Signagi municipality in the Kagan region. This is a pretty remote, hilly area in Georgia, right on the border with Azerbaijan. Obviously, when this thing happened, it drew like international attention, especially due to the close ties between Turkey and Azerbaijan, as well as Georgia's role as a NATO partner and also a regional hub. Now, investigations for this thing are still ongoing, and there's a lot of support from Lockheed Martin, the actual airplane's manufacturer, to figure out what happened. But preliminary reports so far are pointing to a structural failure that was leading to the mid-air disintegration of the aircraft, and we'll talk more about that. So like I said, the aircraft that was involved was a Lockheed Martin C-130 Echo Hercules 4-engine turboprop transport plane that's known for its versatility in military logistics, troop transport, and also humanitarian missions. This specific airframe, with serial number 681609, was built in 1968. Literally while we were still in Vietnam, making it 57 years old at the time of the crash. Now, this airplane was originally delivered to the Saudi Royal Air Force and was acquired by the Turkish Air Force in March of 2010 and had been in active service in the Turkish Air Force since then, logging thousands of flight hours for cargo and personnel transport. Now, the flight designation for this was ICAO Flight HVK 453, call sign Turkish Air Force 543. And the purpose of this particular flight was because they were carrying Turkish military technicians and mechanical parts for F-16 fighter jets and possibly Azerbaijani personnel as part of a routine logistical support operation between the two allied nations. Now, from what all the sources are saying, and also from what the Turkish government's saying, there were apparently 20 people in total on the plane who were all Turkish personnel, including air crew and ground technicians. Although some intelligence reports are suggesting that Azerbaijan military members were also on board, although Turkish military officials only could confirm their people as being on board. And they were described as, quote, heroic comrades in arms who were martyred. Now, since the crash, the Turkish Ministry of National Defense has confirmed the death and identified all 20 of the service members who were tragically killed in that C-130 crash over eastern Georgia. And they publicly released them so that way people could see who they were. I'm assuming they probably notified their next of kin first and wanted to make sure that their families found out that way prior to the news releasing it. Now, after the crash happened, the Turkish President Erdogan promptly responded to this and issued a public statement saying, quote, he was deeply saddened by the incident and extended condolences to the families of the martyrs. He also additionally said, quote, God willing, we will overcome this accident with the least amount of setbacks possible. And then later that evening, he held a phone call with Georgian Prime Minister to discuss the response to this. While there are no verbatim quotes released from that conversation, official summaries from Turkey's communications directorate detailed that he thanked Georgia for its support and condolences, particularly for the rapid deployment of emergency units. And then he also conveyed appreciation for Georgia's solidarity in the collaborative work of joint Turkish-Georgian teams in search and and rescue operations. Now let's talk a little bit about timeline, because a lot of things happened very quickly. So around 10:19 local time, the aircraft departed Ganja International Airport in Azerbaijan on a routine cargo personnel flight to go to Kayseri, Turkey. And so they started climbing to cruising altitude and began fairly normally. By 10:30 to 10:35, the plane crossed into Georgian airspace, reaching a maximum altitude of around 24,000 feet at a speed of around 302 knots. With no kinds of anomalies reported by air traffic control. By 10:35, that's when the tragedy struck, where the plane started to break up in flight, and then the aircraft vanished from radar screens without a distress call of any kind. Georgian air traffic control noted the sudden loss of signal, and the flight tracker website was able to track a lot of this stuff happening too. By 10:36, the eyewitness videos started coming out, and they captured the plane spiraling downward like a corkscrew with a trail of white smoke sticking up from the rear of the plane, which was likely fuel, indicating that the structure of the plane had completely fallen apart. The impact occurred shortly after that. Now, around 1300 local time, or 1 p.m. local time, Georgian authorities were alerted, and then an initial search and rescue team was dispatched to the local area while the Azerbaijani border guards assist from across the frontier there. By 3 p.m. local time, first responders arrived at the actual crash site with smoldering parts of the plane still sitting around. They confirmed that the wreckage was there, and it was spread over a wide area with fire and smoke still billowing off of the parts of it. The Turkish military deployed an unmanned aerial vehicle in addition to that for overhead support to make sure they could survey the area in case there was any stragglers or if somebody had miraculously survived. By the evening of November 11th, the Turkish Defense Ministry issues the initial statement confirming the crash and the casualties, while the president expressed his condolences and sorrow for the occasion. And then by the morning of November 20th, all 20 deaths were confirmed by Turkish officials, and then they posted actual photos of all of the service members' names, and you can read them here. I'll display them up here. You can see these are all uniformed military personnel, and it displayed their names. They showed the names to the public after the next of kin were notified, and there was a joint Turkish-Georgian investigation team that arrived on site on the morning of November 12th as well. They recovered the bodies of 18 of the 20 victims initially, and then a full recovery of all of the rest of the bodies was completed by midday on November 12th. Now, in the latter part of November 12th, the wreckage inspection began with Lockheed Martin offering technical assistance and Georgia opening up a criminal probe under aviation safety laws. Now, the whole thing is very strange because the crash unfolded in a very fast, it happened rapidly. And that was evidenced by some of the widely circulated eyewitness videos that were filmed from the ground near the Azerbaijan-Georgia border. The footage that I've seen that lasts roughly 25 to 30 seconds long pretty much just shows this C-130 in a steep, uncontrolled corkscrew spiral descent under pretty clear skies with a thick trailing smoke trail behind it. It looks like the entire tail of the aircraft snapped off, which would completely send it into a spiral because it wouldn't be able to achieve lift anymore. But one of the speculations that people are saying, and they've posted pictures of the forward fuselage and cockpit crashing separately from the actual tail, the wing section. Yeah, it's just, the whole situation is nuts. But in the video, some of the key observations that people have made is that the aircraft was seen high in the sky, initially flying level before entering a sharp bank. And that was about 8 seconds in, and the contrail-like smoke trail begins, suggesting a sudden loss of control. Then about 9 to 17 seconds in, a full spiral develops, with the plane rotating rapidly, with smoke thickening, fuel dripping visible as dark streaks. And then 18 to 27 seconds to breakup is confirmed. Fuselage and wings detach. Ground impact occurs off frame, but a distant boom and rising smoke pillar are audible. And there were a couple of different videos of this. I've seen the video of the crash where you can actually see the explosion, and I've seen a video of the crash where you can't. So now at the crash site, the folks that pulled up there basically said the fuselage was torn open with the cockpit section sheared off and lying separately, exposing twisted metal and charred interiors. Both wings were detached and crumpled. One was propped against emergency vehicles. Engines were ejected and totally burned out. The debris field included shattered propellers, landing gears, cargo remnants, possibly from F-16 parts scattered across the earth. Now, there's been a lot of speculation online. I mean, I've seen people talking about thinking that Russia was involved in shooting this thing down. They thought that it may have been shot down. I've seen speculation all the way from Russia shot the thing down all the way to the aircraft's age was just the real concern, and there was cracks in the wing box or fuselage or something like that. But either way, there's like an international commission that's comprising of experts from Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia that was established immediately, with the Turkish investigators arriving overnight on November 11th through the 12th. And then Georgia's Ministry of Internal Affairs opened a criminal case under Article 275, Part 4 of the Criminal Code. And there's a probe happening right now focusing on the flight data recorders recovered from the wreckage and metallurgical analysis of the debris. Now, as of November 12th of 2025, there's been no official cause that's been determined, but preliminary assessments describe as an in-flight breakup as the immediate trigger. I've seen some photos with people circling pieces of the aircraft, and there appears to be an entire propeller missing from one of the central, because there's 4 propellers, right? There's 2 center ones. One of the center ones that are closest to the actual cockpit appears to be missing, and people have circled that, suggesting that maybe that propeller came off, and then that's what caused, you know, some of the falling apart to disintegrate happen. But in any case, some folks have said that it was just plain structural failure due to the fact that the aircraft was 57 years old. They thought that maybe there could be fatigue cracks in the wing box or fuselage, which was a known issue in older C-130s that caused prior crashes. They think maybe it could have also been cargo-related issues, like improperly secured F-16 parts that may have shifted, causing internal damage or imbalance. Some other folks are speculating that it could have been cabin pressure or environmental factors, like maybe a potential failure in pressurization or corrosion exacerbated by a high altitude climb. But the one thing I think most people were on board with is the fact that the weather was pretty clear that day. So most folks have ruled out turbulence as a possible contributing factor. And there's, you know, been no evidence of sabotage or external impact, at least from official sources. Now, the one that I've seen, like I said, some people have circled where they think a propeller was missing as this thing was coming down. There's been screenshots of the eyewitness videos that were kind of blurry, but you could see one of the propellers was visibly missing. So some of the early analyses that people have been doing in expert discussions that have taken place about this have been pointing to a structural failure that could have been triggered by a propeller blade detachment. Like, I've seen a lot of these photos where they circle the one engine that looks like it appears to be missing a propeller. And some of the wreckage photos and videos shared by like online users show the fuselage separated, which is consistent with a high energy impact from a loose propeller component slicing through the aircraft's structure. And this has actually happened before in the past. Specifically, there was a 2017 U.S. Marine Corps KC-130 Tango crash in Mississippi where a corroded propeller that was improperly repaired in 2011 detached mid-flight, striking the fuselage and causing a similar breakup, resulting in the deaths of all 16 people on board. So a lot of people are suggesting that the same thing happened here. Now, in the U.S. incidents investigation, the Marine Corps conducted like pretty detailed simulations and animations to reconstruct the sequence. The blade from propeller number 2 separated at high speed, around 300 knots, penetrated the left side of the fuselage, severed critical flight controls and wiring, and then led to rapid decompression and loss of control. Now, these models demonstrated on how such a failure could propagate uncontrollably within seconds. And a lot of people have, you know, pointed out the age of the C-130 airframe to what makes it so vulnerable, especially to uncontained propeller events. Now, as far as the probability of a similar thing happening to this aircraft, the U.S. report highlighted that undetected corrosion or substandard maintenance on propeller blades significantly elevates risk, estimated at up to 1 in 10,000 flight hours for older fleets without rigorous inspections, which is far higher than for well-maintained aircraft. Now, while the Turkish crash investigation is still ongoing, there's aviation forums and preliminary media reports that are suggesting that maintenance lapses on the aging C-130 Echo is the key factor that likely caused this to happen. There's even a slow motion simulation I've seen floating around from the U.S. Naval Institute that kind of shows what would happen in a scenario where a propeller blade flies off of one of the fuselages and it chops like the entire front end of the plane off, and then the thing just tumbles into a nosedive. I can't imagine a more terrifying experience. Like, what a way to go, you know? Some of the close-up footage you can see is like the plane with no tail on it. The tail's completely gone. The cockpit completely severed from it. It's literally just the wings and the propellers for the 3 remaining engines that actually had propellers connected to them. Yeah, it fell in 3 separate sections. And obviously none of them had like parachutes on them when they were up in the cockpit. The parachutes were probably back in the tail of the plane or in the wing section. So either way, this tragedy has prompted international condolences, especially from NATO partners, and it's definitely renewed scrutiny on the aging Cold War era military aircraft. And it's likely that there's going to be a grounding of all of the C-130s that they own for a significant period of time, which the C-130 is a backbone of the Turkish Air Force, with Turkey operating around 19 such aircraft for regional operations, including support for Azerbaijan's military and logistical operations and stuff. So it's likely they're going to be grounding their entire C-130 fleet to do like a maintenance overhaul, especially after such a major event where they like results in the loss of 20 people. They're probably going to take it pretty seriously, you know, because the C-130 is an aging part of their fleet. So they're going to have to, you know. So anyway, crazy situation. Heart goes out to the families, because that's a brutal way to end up with the loss of a loved one right there. So hopefully this results in more strict maintenance standards for these things and adhering to that in a more rigorous manner. I don't think they've come out with an official report yet on what caused it, but a lot of people will believe that's probably it's gonna result in that. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. All right, guys, that's it for the daily roll-up for today. I appreciate you watching the video all the way through to completion. Believe it or not, it actually does help the channel when you watch a video to completion. So if you want to support the channel in other ways, you can like this video, you can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can share this video with your friends and your family. And even if they're not your friends, share it with them too. And as always, I will see you in the next video.